On this day, the Royal Botanic Garden pays tribute and expresses its gratitude to all scientists, researchers, and program coordinators who have used science and scientific discoveries as vehicles for community development. Celebration of Science Day will attract many young children to take up science as a career. This is the day our scientists may like to rededicate themselves to create high-quality scientific research output from Jordan and make the nation proud. Science Day is the day to remind us that the important ingredient for societal transformation, all of the staff who help plan and coordinate this event, and to our sponsors who provide funding and help show us how advance in research translate into a better life. We thank you very much. When the sun came out this morning and the light shone on the greenness welcomed it and comprehended it and put it to use. The greenness was chlorophyll, a pigment. It was arranged in pools, and the sunlight's energy bounced from one molecule to the next. Before reaching the subtle trap at the pool center, the 3 billion-year-old trap where the light of the sun becomes the stuff of the earth. The manufacture of life from light is not the only thing going on as our dawn sweeps over Jordan. For every leaf that greets the dawn, there's an ant that eyes the leaf, and a bee that delivers the pollen. For the growing grass, there is hungry sheep, and for the fattening sheep, there are hungry men. For the sugar-swollen root, there's a sugar-sucking fungus. For growth, there's decay. All over the world, by day and night, animals and bacteria and fungi and the plants themselves are using the oxygen which photosynthesis spits out into the atmosphere to turn organic material back into carbon dioxide and water. In so doing, they liberate the energy the plants store away. The two processes come close to canceling each other out. This is the whole system. And this brings us to the RBG ethos, to practice and advocate biodiversity conservation at the whole systems level. The Royal Botanic Garden is a non-profit, non-governmental, nationally driven project that was focused on the conservation of our native species. The idea first began in 1999 by Her Highness Princess Basma bint Ali, who is the founder of the Royal Botanic Garden, which is part of the biodiversity strategy and action plan prepared by the Ministry of Environment to implement the 1992 Convention on Biological Diversity, ratified by Jordan in 1993. There are two main concepts that underpin the Royal Botanic Garden's work. The first concept bases the RBG's conservation work on Jordan's habitats as a biotic whole, while having native species at its core with special emphasis on endemics, such that we come to understand the relationship between native species within these habitats and how they have come to adapt to their situations. This will prove to be of great value in tackling the challenges of climate change. The way in which we can achieve this is by incorporating the following aspects: the biogeographical conditions, the complete watershed area, the soil condition, and the exposure to the elements. The second concept is really a pioneering aspect of the garden, where we acknowledge the interrelationship of man and the ecosystem. The primary aim is to identify and quantify the carrying capacity of the land, such that through scientific research, we can demonstrate how humans as a species play an integral role in the ecosystem, because in reality we cannot separate the two and have successful conservation. It has been proven in many aspects and areas across the globe that it is futile to fence off a piece of land and declare it a protected area without involving the local community. It only goes to prove quite the opposite by reinforcing the concept that the areas which lie outside the protected zone are not worth our protecting or allowed to be exploited. One must realize that the fate of our biological diversity lies in how successful our work is. A few years ago, it was estimated that roughly 10,000 species of threatened plants exist in such protected areas as living collections of botanic gardens, seed banks, and tissue culture collections. In certain instances, designated areas as protected areas is vital for the survival of certain species. With the two concepts in mind, the Royal Botanic Garden has divided its work into three main streams, all of which complement each other to fulfill the requirements of our main roles. As you will see, the Royal Botanic Garden is a multi-layered project with different components that are directly interlinked. We have the science and conservation component, the education and community development component, and the sustainable living component. Today's Science Day, so we'll be going into the science and conservation component. I'm going to list you the different programs that we're working on in research. The first program is our ex situ conservation work through the habitat recreation. The second one is the community-based rangeland rehabilitation program. The national strategy for plant conservation, which includes, of course, the establishment of the IUCN Red List of threatened species. The national herbarium, the seed bank and nursery, the Jordan Mushroom Project, the National Materials Research Program, and the biological indicators and surface water pollutants. In regards to the conservation, the Royal Botanic Garden will be working on two parallel levels. The in situ conservation, represented by home habitats, and ex situ conservation at the main site at Ar-Rumman. For the in situ conservation aspect, we are collaborating with governmental and non-governmental entities to identify and demarcate important plant areas which represent the different habitats in their natural locations to allow for natural evolution to take its course. Not only will these areas serve as natural seed bank, but also as living wild collections. As for our ex situ conservation strategy of Jordan at the main site, which will enable us to gather a good genetic stock, as well as study these systems and observe how they will adapt with climate change. Our next program is the community-based rangeland rehabilitation program, which aims to maximize both biodiversity and promote the management of high-quality rangelands at the same time. RBG will be demonstrating the success of ecosystem services, improving livelihoods while increasing biodiversity. This is not a new phenomenon, but draws on our tradition of the HEMA system, which was successful for over thousands of years, and we only lost that connection in the last 100 years. The CBRR program is now in its fourth year. We are studying the carrying capacity of our rangelands, while focusing on native forage species do not require irrigation, as we help the herders become more business-oriented. I am happy to also say that from our studies we have observed an increase of 30% in biomass of the managed grazing program, as a result from the managed grazing program. I would also like to note here that when the RBG first started a few years ago, the local pastoral community were actually a destructive force against the garden, mainly because we temporarily prevented them from grazing on our lands to study the land and how it recuperates. Actually, we have certain plants which were thought to be extinct reappear again. Going back to the CBRR program, we did compensate them with fodder based on the estimates of biomass, which resulted in a direct relation between the supplements and increase in revenue. However, they were quickly won over as we involved them in planning phases, and now they are the protectors of the garden and the protectors of the whole area, while still being able to live off the land in their traditional lifestyle. RBG helped build their businesses and financial capacity by doing activities such as training them on veterinary services, doing business plans, teaching them herd management, which includes issues as feeding and breeding management. In 2008, we started out with 5 families. Now there are 21 families, and we hope to include families from across the nation. Exactly 1 year ago, the Royal Botanic Garden hosted the first regional IUCN Red List of Threatened Species Trainers Workshop. The IUCN Red List of the threatened species is widely recognized as the most comprehensive, objective, global approach for evaluating the conservation status of plant and animal species. In the past year, we have been working hard to prepare a gap analysis report, which my colleague Hatem today will explain in more detail. I am happy to say that now today we will be launching and starting our first day of the establishment of the IUCN Red List. When we, inshallah, publish the red data book for Jordan's plants and know the red list status of our plants, we will turn our attention to the species most in need of protection and prepare a red list recovery program. The Royal Botanic Garden has been identified as one of 12 national hotspots for the conservation of medicinal and herbal plants. Jordan has over 330 plants known to have market value for the pharmaceutical and cosmetic industry. We are currently working on a new program to address the growing interest in our medicinal plants. We are going to go back to our roots by studying the old literature on the issue, such as Ibn al-Arabi and Ibn Sina, and cross-reference it with current folk medicine, then collaborate with the universities and pharmaceutical industry to study their potential economic value. Basically, we would like to develop and formalize herbal medicine in Jordan. I'd also like to add that we are working on a strategy to mainstream the medicinal plant program into the Nagoya Protocol on access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from their utilization to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Creating a national herbarium is a priority action under the National Biodiversity Conservation Strategy. The herbarium at RBG serves as a permanent record of specimens, allowing anyone to go back and check and identify, resample, and repeat research. The production of herbarium specimens is therefore an important but often forgotten aspect of botanical studies. Also today, inshallah, we will be launching our virtual herbarium for everyone to access. Another ex-situ conservation program is our seed bank. The aim of the Royal Botanic Gardens seed bank is to preserve plants on a national scale that are at risk, as well as those most useful for future generations. Collecting and storing plants on a national scale like this has many advantages, including resources for future research into cures for diseases. In times of crop destruction by inclement weather, stored seeds can provide a new hope for the future. Our nursery's advantage is threefold: ensuring the propagation of threatened species, stocking the garden for landscape purposes, and providing the public with a sustainable source of plants to stop them from collecting from the wild, as is the case with the black iris. The goal of our mushroom research is to evaluate the edible genetic resources of the native mushrooms of Jordan. Most current mushroom production in Jordan depends on importing mushroom spores from the outside of the country, as our native mushrooms have not yet been assessed for commercial production. The research in our mushroom program is focused on evaluating the nutritious value of indigenous mushrooms, producing mushroom spores, identifying production protocols for edible native mushrooms at the lowest cost possible, and also publishing a field guide illustrating the biodiversity of wild mushrooms in Jordan. Our National Materials Program focuses on using the sediments of the King Talal Dam to use in construction, water harvesting systems, and even handicrafts. This method will reduce carbon footprint, provide the average Jordanian with a method of building with highly efficient, cheap, and healthy material. An integrated assessment is being conducted. An integrated assessment is being conducted on water quality in the King Talal Dam to evaluate the water quality and degree of pollution. Parameters such as organic load, discharge, bottom substrates, and pollutants are being examined. A biological method known as biofilm monitoring is being used to help determine the overall ecological quality. You can see the biofilm on the top left. And there's a funny story actually. When we started putting them in the dam, in the water, next morning we'll come and we'll find them, they were gone. And the reason was because the fishermen in that area were stealing them. Actually, the illegal fishermen were stealing them. And I don't know why, because there's no value for them. So this is something, maybe a program that we can work on too. Just like the CBR program, we work with local communities, we can work also with the local fishermen. We are the voice of the plants, and as it is mentioned in the Holy Quran that man is the steward of earth, it is our duty to protect and nurture the environment, not to exploit and destroy. This is translated as the educational program in the RBG, where we have different target groups. Of course, we have the scientific community, the general public, political leaders, and the stakeholders. First on the list is working closely with the scientific community, where our ambition is to become the leaders and the central resource for research specifically on arid climates. However, it is important for this scientific information to be shared with the public because we believe if you have a well-informed public, then you have won 3/4 of the battle. But this information needs to be translated into layman words. The Royal Botanic Garden will be constructing a visitor center and pavilions for interpreting the information as to educate the visitors and the general public alike. The same goes for the decision makers, but on a much higher level. We will be providing valuable information and producing data to help decision makers in the policy development. This will prove to be beneficial to Jordan when tackling issues ranging from water management to food security. Basically, we want to make biodiversity conservation a national priority. Our other program to be implemented is our income generating program that works with the herders' wives and other women from the local community to capitalize on their skills by developing micro-projects related to our habitats. By increasing the income stream of whole families, we increase the efficiency of the herd size while calculating the carrying capacity of the land to herd size, which then reduces the dependency on herding and thus the destructive pressure on the environment, and as a result, we reduce rural to urban migration. At which point we then get the local community to train other communities and have them become the mentors. One of the top priorities of the garden is to become a demonstration site, because it is important for us to practice what we preach and to ensure that whatever we preach is very doable for the average Jordanian. We are trying to promote low-tech, low-maintenance techniques which will increase the likelihood of the visitors practicing sustainable living. For example, in our water harvesting component, we are using Nabatean and traditional watershed management techniques to develop and plan out our water harvesting components, mainly because it is low-tech and very efficient. This brings us to the next component, which is eco-building techniques. We have also decided to markedly reduce our use of cement in construction, as it has a high carbon footprint, but promote lime and natural building materials, techniques, and rendering, which are by far healthier and cheaper to build. The Royal Botanic Garden aims to be fully energy sufficient in the future, and we are already working on developing a carbon strategy. The RBG is also going to encourage organic agriculture in Jordan by developing infrastructure for the industry. As for the design of the buildings, we will be using the sacred Islamic sciences to develop the designs. The evolution of Scientific Day is due to the dedication and support of all of you here today. Please enjoy the outstanding projects presented here today by our team at RBG. As you do, we hope that you will reflect on our humble beginnings, be proud of where we are today, and help us build a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder, Her Royal Highness Princess Basma bint Ali, has a strong connection with the environment. Years ago, she decided to create the Royal Botanic Garden of Jordan to preserve native plants and ecosystems and promote biodiversity research and environmental learning. Princess Basma served for more than 12 years in the Jordanian Army. She is a major and received the Gold Medal for Excellence from His Majesty late King Hussein in 1995 and other awards from the Jordanian Armed Forces in 1998. Her Royal Highness has received international recognition for her efforts to bring environmental issues to the forefront in Jordan, including a place on the UN Environmental Programme's Global 500 Roll of Honor. In 1998, she became the first Arab woman to receive the title of Hero for the Planet from Time magazine. In addition to her work on the land, Princess Basma founded the Royal Marine Conservation Society of Jordan in 1993 to conserve the country's marine areas and inform people about the need to protect the marine life. And also recently, Her Royal Highness has received the Henry Shaw Award for Excellence from the Missouri Botanical Gardens. The Henry Shaw Award is one of the most highest honored awards in the state of Missouri.